Bill Gates, one of the most influential and wealthiest men in the world, decided to do something unusual one day. Tired of corporate meetings and billionaire circles, he dressed down, put on a worn-out hoodie, and walked into a small cafe he used to visit in his early years, only this time, nobody recognized him. What happened next became a story that would shake that small business to its core. But before we dive in, don't forget to comment where you're watching from, and if this story moves you, hit that like button and subscribe for more inspirational stories. Ready? Let's begin. It was a cloudy morning in downtown Seattle. The streets were damp from the early drizzle. A small cafe tucked between two buildings opened its doors as usual. The staff were busy preparing the counter, arranging pastries, and checking their phones. A man in his late 60s, wearing a plain gray hoodie, old sneakers, and glasses walked in. His presence was calm but almost invisible. It was Bill Gates, though no one knew it. He looked around the place nostalgically, eyes pausing on a specific corner table. But to the barista behind the counter, he was just another old man in need of coffee. Bill walked up to the counter. The young barista, barely looking up from her phone, greeted him with a disinterested, "Yeah?" Bill smiled gently. "I'd like a cappuccino, please." The guard laughed mockingly. "A guy like you only comes here to dig through the trash. Cash or card?" She snapped back. Bill reached for his wallet, which looked as worn as his clothes. He fumbled for a card, one with no name. The barista eyed him with suspicion. "We don't take prepaids," she said, assuming he didn't have the means. He chuckled softly. "It's not prepaid. Just a little old." She shrugged. "Whatever. Just take a seat. I'll call you." As he walked away, she whispered to another staff member, "We get all kinds of weirdos." The cafe owner, a man in his 40s named Jake, stepped in minutes later. Wearing a tailored vest, stylish loafers, and a smartwatch, he gave the staff high fives and laughed loudly. Then his eyes landed on Bill. "Who's that guy?" he asked the barista. "Some old dude. Probably a vagrant. Just got a coffee." Jake frowned. "Well, make sure he doesn't loiter. We've got a vibe to maintain." Bill overheard it all. He kept his composure, sipping the cappuccino that finally arrived, poorly made, lukewarm. But he didn't complain. Jake approached Bill's table. "Hey there, sir. You done with that coffee?" Bill looked up. "Not quite. I used to come here years ago. Place looked different then." Jake forced a laugh. "Well, it's a bit more premium now. We don't usually get visitors like you." Bill tilted his head. "Like me?" Jake nodded. "No offense. Just, young techies, creatives, influencers. That's our crowd." There was a pause. Then Bill said softly, "You ever think those people succeed because someone gave them a chance?" Jake smirked. "Maybe. But this is a business, not a charity." Jake motioned toward the door. "Anyway, we've got people waiting for tables. You understand?" Bill nodded and stood up. "Of course." He placed a generous tip, a crisp $100 bill, on the table. The barista saw it and ran after him. "Sir. Wait, this has to be a mistake." But he simply waved and walked away, disappearing into the street fog. The staff laughed, shaking their heads. "Probably stolen money," one of them joked. They had no idea what they'd just done. The next morning, Jake arrived to an urgent message from his assistant. "Jake, you need to see this." She handed over a tablet. It displayed an article titled, "Billionaire Bill Gates Spotted in Seattle Cafe, Staff Fails to Recognize Him." Photos from a passerby had gone viral. Jake's face drained of color. The man he dismissed was Bill Gates. And then came the second shock, a formal notice of business interest, from Bill's foundation. Bill had sent a letter to the cafe via legal courier. It read, "You once served a young man who came here to code for hours over one coffee. That boy became me. Yesterday, I returned to see if the spirit of hospitality remained. Sadly, it did not. As of this morning, I've secured a controlling share in the leaseholder's parent company. This cafe now belongs to me." Jake sat in stunned silence. His pride, his ego, shattered. By noon, Bill arrived. This time in a suit, surrounded by his team. Reporters gathered outside. Inside, staff were frozen. Jake tried to speak. "Mr. Gates, I didn't know." But Bill raised a hand. Respect shouldn't depend on recognition. He turned to the staff. "This place isn't what it used to be. But it can be." Bill called a staff meeting. One by one, he asked each employee a single question. "What do you value more, status or service?" The barista stammered. Jake looked down. Bill then calmly said, "There will be changes. Starting with leadership." Jake was dismissed on the spot. The cafe underwent transformation. Not in decor, but in culture. Bill brought in former employees he remembered, kind faces from his past. He installed a new manager, a woman who had once been rejected from the cafe for not looking the part. She stood proudly beside him. The cafe had never been this quiet. Every employee, from baristas to kitchen staff, stood in silence as Bill Gates stepped onto the small wooden platform near the register, the very spot where he was dismissed just 24 hours earlier. He took a moment, scanning the room, his gaze steady but calm. "I wasn't here yesterday to test your skills. I came to see how you treat a stranger. Because how you treat the least important person says everything about your values." His voice was steady, but firm. Success is built on kindness, humility, and awareness, not lattes and hashtags. Then he looked toward the security camera. "And to those watching this, I say, you never know who's sitting in your cafe." The staff were visibly shaken. The barista who had mocked him now had tears in her eyes. She whispered, "I didn't mean to treat you like that. I was just stressed." Bill walked over. "I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. But every mistake is a lesson, if you're willing to learn." He handed her a note. "A chance to redeem yourself. Free training, paid by me. But only if you promise to treat the next nobody like a somebody." She nodded, speechless. Jake, the former owner, stood outside the cafe as cameras swarmed the street. He looked at the window where his name had once been etched in gold. He pushed the door open. "Bill. Mr. Gates. I was wrong." Bill didn't look surprised. "You were. But are you ready to fix it, or just regret it?" Jake paused, then extended a hand. "I want to do better. Anywhere. Just start over." Bill looked at him for a long second. Then said, "We'll see. The world gives second chances. But first, you need to earn one." News broke across every major network. Bill Gates acquires local cafe to promote human-centered hiring practices. Posters went up around Seattle. The cafe's new slogan? Kindness first. Coffee second. Bill announced a reopening event where everyone, regardless of income, could walk in, grab a coffee, and share their story. "No one gets judged by their clothes here anymore," he said during a press conference. "We're rebuilding more than a business, we're rebuilding perspective." The day before reopening, Bill sat quietly at the same corner table again. This time, the cafe was empty, dimly lit, just like it had been decades ago. He opened a worn notebook, the one he used to scribble ideas in as a young man. He smiled at a faded note. "Don't build for money. Build for meaning." He whispered to himself, "That's why I came back. To see if the world still remembers that." Crowds lined up outside the cafe. But it wasn't for celebrity sightings, it was for what the cafe now represented. Among the first guests was a single mom, a retired veteran, and a college dropout looking for work. Each was greeted with warmth. Coffee was free. Smiles were real. No one asked for resumes, followers, or titles. Bill sat at the counter, speaking to them one by one. A young man approached nervously, holding a small laptop. "Sir, I built a prototype app that helps the homeless find shelters. I just don't know how to launch it." Bill listened carefully. "Let me see." 10 minutes later, he smiled. "You've got heart. That's step 1. Step 2? Let me fund your step 3. The boy's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "As serious as the world's problems," Bill replied. "Let's fix some." Inspired by the story, cafes in other cities started similar movements. No status needed, cafes popped up from New York to San Diego. Bill had started a culture shift, one cup of coffee at a time. Bloggers, vloggers, and CEOs shared their own hidden identity experiences. A new trend began, empathy entrepreneurship. Later that week, Bill met Melinda for dinner. She smiled. "So, you bought a cafe?" He chuckled. "I bought a wake-up call." She nodded. "The world needs more of that. Not tech. Not money. But awareness." He raised his glass. "To people over profit." The camera fades out as Bill watches the cafe glow warmly from the outside. Bill Gates didn't return to that cafe for coffee. He returned for perspective. And gave everyone else a taste of humility. Because sometimes, the richest person in the room is the one who needs the least, but gives the most. Remember, the next stranger who walks through your door might be writing your future. So treat them with the kindness you hope to receive, whether you know their name or not.